In the harsh Arizona territory of 1870, dust storms and prejudice ravaged the frontier with equal cruelty. William Blackwood, a widower haunted by failure, watches in disbelief as a pregnant black woman is auctioned by her wealthy white in-laws after her husband's death. When the local brothel owner makes the winning bid, William spends his last dollar to save her, offering marriage instead of servitude. With a baby coming and powerful enemies circling, William must defend his unexpected family against those who would tear them apart for fortune and status. A man who once couldn't save his own family now stands as the only shield between a mother, her child, and a world determined to destroy them. A lone gunshot echoed across the dusty main street of Redemption. William Blackwood stood over a well-dressed man, smoking revolver in hand, while a pregnant black woman watched in horror from the porch of the town's only church. The sheriff pushed through the gathering crowd as William dropped his weapon and raised his hands. "He came for my wife," William said quietly. The dead man's associates drew their weapons as Mercy cried out, "He's telling the truth!" The sheriff looked between them, visibly confused. "Your wife?" he asked, emphasizing the word with unmistakable skepticism as he glanced at Mercy. 6 months earlier, the Arizona Territory sun beat down mercilessly on William Blackwood's back as he rode into Redemption. 2 years a widower, the ranch work had carved deep lines into his face. His clothes hung loose on his frame. The horse beneath him sensed his weariness, plodding along the rutted main street toward the general store. William dismounted, tying his horse to the hitching post. Monthly supplies, nothing more. Back to the empty ranch before nightfall. A commotion near the trading post drew unwanted attention. A crowd gathered, men jostling for position. An auction. William turned away. Then he heard the auctioneer's voice. "Next item up for bid. Labor contract for this healthy young woman. Good for farm work, cooking, cleaning. Comes with an extra pair of hands in about 2 months." William glanced over. A black woman stood on the wooden platform. Her chin held high despite her circumstances, her belly swollen with child, her eyes fixed on some distant point above the jeering crowd. $20, called a ranch hand. 25, countered another. William's gaze shifted to an elegant carriage parked nearby. The Prescott family, mining fortune, respected citizens, Mrs. Prescott's face half hidden behind a lace fan, Mr. Prescott watching with cold detachment. $40 from Mr. Jenkins of the Silver Dollar Saloon, the auctioneer announced. The brothel owner, William's jaw tightened. "Do I hear 45? Silence fell over the crowd. Going once, William found himself stepping forward. $50. Surprised murmurs rippled through the onlookers. The woman's gaze snapped to William's face. No gratitude there, only wariness. $50 from Mr. Blackwood, the auctioneer said, surprised. Do I hear 55? Jenkins shook his head, backing away. Sold to William Blackwood for $50. William approached the platform, the full weight of his impulsive bid settling on his shoulders. The clerk handed him papers to sign. A labor contract, binding this woman to his service. He looked up at her. "What's your name?" "Mercy Johnson," she answered, voice stronger than he expected. Mr. Prescott approached, his expensive boots leaving precise imprints in the dust. "Good of you to take this burden off our hands, Blackwood." "Your burden?" "My son's widow," Prescott said quietly. "Charles had unconventional tastes. Married her back east before he died in the mine collapse. The family can't very well acknowledge such a union." William looked again at Mercy Johnson, Charles Prescott's widow, carrying his child, being sold off like unwanted livestock. "These papers," William said, holding the contract, "they bind her to whoever holds them?" The clerk nodded. 7 years of labor as the law allows. William tore the papers in half. The crowd gasped. "I don't want a servant," he said, "but I do need a wife." Mercy's eyes widened. The Prescotts exchanged glances. "Marrying her would be legal protection," William continued, "for her and the child." You can't be serious, Mrs. Prescott hissed. But William had already turned to Mercy. A marriage of convenience, nothing more. You'll have your own room. When the child comes, you'll both have a home, food, protection. Mercy studied his face. Why? William had no answer that made sense even to himself. Only the memory of another woman, another child. Both gone now. It's better than the alternative, he said finally. She nodded once, sharp and decisive. They were married that afternoon. The preacher performed the ceremony with visible reluctance, refusing to meet Mercy's eyes. No rings were exchanged. No promises beyond the basic vows. The Prescotts did not attend. William helped Mercy into his wagon afterward. Her few possessions fit in a single cloth bag. They rode in silence as the sun dipped toward the western mountains. His ranch came into view as dusk fell. A small house, barn needing repair, fenced pasture with a few head of cattle. Nothing impressive. It's not much, William said. It's something, Mercy replied. Inside, William showed her to the spare room. Clean sheets on the bed, a wash basin on the dresser, a small window facing east. This will be yours, he said. No one will bother you here. Mercy set her bag on the bed. And what do you expect in return? Help with the ranch when you're able. After the baby comes. Nothing more? William shook his head. Nothing more. Later, they sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Two strangers bound by a document neither fully understood. Their shadows stretched long against the wall in the lamplight. William broke the silence. Are you hungry? Yes. He served them both beans and cornbread. Simple food. They ate without speaking. In the morning, William would need to explain how the ranch worked, where the well was, which neighbors could be trusted, the miles to town, all the practical matters of their new arrangement. For now, this quiet meal was enough. Two people at a crossroads, each wondering if they'd made a terrible mistake. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. A storm coming. William glanced at Mercy's profile in the dim light. Her face revealed nothing of her thoughts. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm. I won't be treated like property. Nor should you be, William replied. Thunder rolled in the distance. The ranch house stood small against the gathering darkness, a fragile shelter against whatever might come. Dawn broke over the ranch with unforgiving clarity. William had already been awake for hours, mending fence in the north pasture. His hands moved with practiced precision. The rhythm of the work kept unwanted thoughts at bay. From the corner of his eye, he spotted movement. Mercy stood at the edge of the garden, surveying the overgrown plot. She wore one of his old shirts belted over her dress to shield it from dirt. Her pregnant silhouette stark against the morning sky. William hammered another nail. The sound echoed across the empty land. By midday, Mercy had cleared a section of the garden, fresh, turned soil dark against the dry ground. William brought her water without comment. She drank deeply, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. The soil's good here, she said, just neglected. William nodded. They both understood she wasn't just talking about the garden. Days passed in this manner. William working the ranch from dawn to dusk. Mercy bringing order to the neglected house and garden. They spoke little, ate meals in near silence. Two people orbiting each other, careful not to collide. One evening, William returned to find Mercy in the small back room, the half-finished nursery he'd abandoned 2 years ago. She stood motionless, holding a tiny knitted cap in her hands. I found these, she said, in the trunk. William stiffened. Those were meant for my son. I'll put them back. No. His voice softened. Use them. They should serve their purpose. That night, Mercy heard him pacing, the floorboards creaking under his weight like an animal in a too small cage. The next day brought their first trip to town together. William helped Mercy onto the wagon seat, careful not to touch her more than necessary. The sky stretched endless above them, clouds casting moving shadows across the landscape. At the general store, the bell jingled as they entered. Conversation stopped. Eyes turned. The storekeeper's wife whispered something to a customer. The storekeeper himself appeared from the back room. "We don't serve her kind here," he said. William placed his list on the counter. "We need supplies." "Not from me, you don't." William's jaw tightened. "I've traded here for 5 years." "That was before." The storekeeper's eyes flicked to Mercy. They left with nothing. The wagon ride home stretched long and silent. At the crossroads, William turned the horses toward the next settlement. 3 hours further. They returned after nightfall with the supplies they needed. Mercy fell asleep against William's shoulder on the journey back. He didn't wake her until they reached home. The following week, the minister paid them a visit. Reverend Hollis sat stiffly in their kitchen, refusing Mercy's offer of coffee. "The congregation is concerned," he said. William leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "About?" "This arrangement. It isn't proper. We're legally married." The minister adjusted his collar. "You've made your point, William. Whatever misguided charity prompted this can be undone. The church can find a more suitable placement for her." "Her name is Mercy," William said quietly, "and she's my wife." After the minister left, Mercy found William in the barn, his shoulders bunched as he brushed down the horses with unnecessary force. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Do what?" "Defend me." William set down the brush. "Yes, I did." Only Dr. Abigail Porter showed them any kindness. She came to check on Mercy's pregnancy, bringing medicinal herbs and practical advice. A woman doctor, unmarried. She understood what it meant to exist outside society's narrow bounds. During one visit, while William was out with the cattle, Mercy confided in Dr. Porter. "Charles and I truly loved each other," she said, folding and refolding a small blanket. "We met during the war. I was nursing at a field hospital." Dr. Porter nodded. "The Prescotts tell a different story." They never approved. But the marriage was real. Charles wrote them about it before the mine collapse. They never responded. Later that evening, Mercy found William at the grave markers behind the house. 2 simple wooden crosses, his first wife, their infant son. "Dr. Porter says the baby is healthy," she said, approaching slowly. William nodded, not turning around. "She says I should be prepared for an early birth. First babies sometimes come that way." William's hand rested on the smaller cross. Mine did. That night, William's nightmares woke them both. Mercy found him in the kitchen, staring into a cup of cold coffee, his face haunted in the dim lamplight. "I couldn't save them," he said without looking up. "The fever came fast. First Emily, then little John, 2 days later." Mercy sat across from him. "My parents died of fever too. Yellow fever in New Orleans." William finally met her eyes. "My Quaker family disowned me for marrying Emily. Catholic, you see, no better than marrying a foreigner in their eyes. And now you've married me." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. They'd be scandalized all over again. The confession formed a tenuous bridge between them. Not friendship exactly, something more complicated, recognition of shared wounds. The next day, William rode into town on ranch business. At the county clerk's office, he discovered an unopened letter addressed to Charles Prescott. The clerk, distracted by another customer, allowed William to examine it. Inside was Charles Prescott's will, properly notarized. It named his unborn child as heir to his share of Prescott mining, 1/3 of the entire operation, a fortune by any standard. William refolded the document, mind racing. If the Prescotts knew about this, it would explain their eagerness to rid themselves of Mercy and her child. He tucked the letter into his pocket. Better Mercy didn't know. She might think he married her for the inheritance. Better to protect her from this knowledge until the baby came. A week later, the sky darkened mid-afternoon. Dust storm approaching. William rushed to secure the animals, while Mercy closed the house tight against the coming onslaught. The wind hit with sudden violence. William barely made it inside before visibility dropped to nothing. The house groaned under the assault. They sealed wet cloths around the windows and doors to keep the fine dust out. "It's early for dust season," William said, voice raised over the howling wind. Mercy placed a hand on her belly, her face contorted in pain. "What is it?" William asked. "The baby," she gasped. "It's coming." Outside, the world disappeared in swirling brown darkness. Inside, Mercy labored on their only bed. William boiled water, laid out clean cloths, remembered Dr. Porter's instructions, prayed in ways he hadn't since childhood. Hours passed. The storm raged. Mercy's cries mingled with the wind's fury. William held her hand, wiped her brow, spoke soft encouragements he wasn't sure she heard. Near midnight, as the storm began to ease, a new sound filled the house. A baby's first lusty cry. William stared in wonder at the tiny, perfect boy in his hands. Dark hair, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Alive. "Isaiah," Mercy whispered, reaching for her son. "His name is Isaiah." William placed the swaddled infant in her arms. Something shifted in his chest. A wall crumbling, a door opening. He touched the baby's cheek with one calloused finger. "Hello, Isaiah," he said, voice breaking on the name. Outside, the dust settled. Stars emerged in the clearing sky. Inside, a family took its first fragile breath. Spring settled over the ranch, painting the land in cautious greens. Isaiah grew stronger each day. William completed the nursery, working late into the evenings, the steady rhythm of his hammer a lullaby through the house. Mercy recovered her strength quickly. She moved between garden and kitchen with new purpose. Fresh vegetables appeared on their table. Wildflowers in a jar by the window. Small touches of life returning to the barren homestead. One evening, William paused outside Isaiah's room. The sound of singing drifted through the half-open door. Mercy rocking the baby, her voice low and sweet. A song William didn't recognize. Something from her childhood, perhaps. He lingered, unwilling to interrupt the moment. Later, he sat on the porch steps, nursing a cup of coffee, the night air cool against his skin. Mercy joined him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "Is he asleep?" William asked. She nodded. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. "You have a good voice," William said finally. Mercy glanced at him, surprised. "My mother sang in church, before she died." William nodded. Another piece of her past offered like a gift. He was learning to recognize them. Days took on a rhythm, mornings in the fields, afternoons tending livestock, evenings spent in quiet domesticity. Sometimes William caught Mercy watching him with Isaiah, something unreadable in her expression. He began singing to the baby, too. Old Quaker hymns his own mother had sung, simple melodies that stirred long-buried memories. Once he looked up to find Mercy in the doorway, eyes soft in the fading light. Their meals grew longer, conversation less stilted. William described his plans for the ranch. Mercy spoke of the garden, of Isaiah's milestones, small talk that slowly built bridges between their separate lives. One morning, William found a newly patched shirt laid across his bed, the stitches neat and even. That evening, Mercy discovered a carved wooden rattle beside Isaiah's crib. Neither mentioned these exchanges. The gifts spoke loudly enough. The first hint of trouble came with riders bearing the Prescott Mining Company insignia. 3 men on horseback, stopping at the edge of the property, claiming to be surveying nearby land, their eyes sharp on the house, on Mercy glimpsed through the window. William met them at the property line, rifle not pointed but present. The conversation brief, the message clear. They rode away, but William knew they would return. That night, he took out the letter he'd found in town. Charles Prescott's will. Proof of Isaiah's claim to the Prescott fortune. He stared at it long after Mercy had gone to bed, weighing the consequences of truth against the comfort of silence. He locked the document in his desk drawer, Tomorrow would be soon enough for hard truths. Tonight, he wanted to preserve the fragile peace they'd built. The riders returned 3 nights later. William woke to the smell of smoke, the barn aflame against the night sky. He grabbed his rifle, shouting for Mercy to stay inside with Isaiah. The attackers had planned well. 3 men on horseback circling the property, firing at shadows, creating chaos in the darkness. William returned fire from behind the water trough. A cry told him he'd hit one of them. The shot that found William caught him by surprise. A burning line across his ribs, not fatal, but enough to drop him to one knee, blood warm against his palm. Another shot rang out from the direction of the house, then another. Mercy stood in the doorway, William's old shotgun braced against her shoulder, her face illuminated by the burning barn. The riders retreated, dragging their wounded companion. William staggered to his feet, one hand pressed to his side, pride and fear warring in his chest at the sight of Mercy with the gun. "You're bleeding," she said, lowering the shotgun. The wound wasn't deep. Mercy cleaned and bandaged it with practiced hands. Years of nursing during the war evident in every efficient movement, her fingers gentle against his skin. "Why would they attack us?" she asked, tying off the bandage. William winced, not from pain. "I found something in town, Charles's will. It names your child as his heir." Mercy's hands stilled. "What?" "Isaiah stands to inherit 1/3 of Prescott Mining. Those men were sent to scare us off. Or worse." Mercy's expression hardened. "You knew this. How long?" "Since before Isaiah was born." She stood abruptly, stepping away from him. "That's why you married me. For the inheritance. Number I didn't know until after. But you kept it from me." William had no defense. The truth hung between them, ugly and undeniable. "I thought I was protecting you," he said. "By lying?" The trust they'd carefully built crumbled like ash. Mercy spent the night in Isaiah's room, door firmly closed. William sat at the kitchen table until dawn, his side throbbing in rhythm with his conscience. In the days that followed, Mercy was polite, but distant. She cared for his wound with clinical detachment, spoke only when necessary. The warmth that had begun to grow between them withered under the frost of her disappointment. William threw himself into rebuilding the barn, working from first light until he was too exhausted to think, his body healing faster than the damage he'd done to their relationship. One afternoon, he found Mercy packing a small bag, Isaiah asleep in his cradle nearby. "You're leaving," he said. "Not a question. When you're healed, Isaiah and I will go east, start fresh." William nodded slowly. "I won't stop you." That night, he slept in the barn, the half-rebuilt structure offering little protection from the night air. His dreams were troubled, Emily's face blending with Mercy's, both women turning away from him in disappointment. He woke to the sound of approaching horses, morning light barely breaking over the horizon. 5 riders, the sheriff among them. Behind him, the unmistakable figure of Elijah Prescott. William grabbed his rifle, ignoring the pull of his wound. He reached the house just as they dismounted. "Mr. Blackwood," the sheriff called out, "I have papers here from Judge Wilson." William positioned himself between the men and the door. "What kind of papers?" "Court order," Prescott said, satisfaction evident in his voice, declaring the colored woman an unfit mother due to her illegitimate marriage. The child is to be remanded to his rightful blood relatives. William's grip tightened on his rifle. "There's nothing illegitimate about our marriage." The sheriff looked uncomfortable. "Judge says different. Says a marriage between her kind and yours isn't recognized by territorial law." The door opened behind William. Mercy stepped out. Isaiah clutched to her chest, her face composed despite the fear in her eyes. "That's not true," William said. "The law doesn't forbid it." "It does when I paid the judge to say so," Prescott replied, voice low enough that only William could hear. The sheriff held out the papers. "I'm just doing my job, William. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." William didn't lower his rifle. "This is my family. My home. I suggest you all leave while you still can." For a long moment, no one moved. The morning breeze stirred dust at their feet. Birds called from a nearby tree, oblivious to the human drama below. Finally, the sheriff stepped back. "We'll return with more men, William. This isn't over." Prescott's face darkened with anger. "You're making a mistake." "It wouldn't be my first," William replied. They watched the men ride away, the threat of their return hanging in the air like storm clouds on the horizon. Mercy stood beside William, Isaiah quiet in her arms, the distance between them suddenly insignificant against this new danger. "What do we do now?" she asked. William looked at her, at Isaiah, at the home they had begun to build together. His answer surprised them both. "We fight. Together." That night, they sat at the kitchen table, plans replacing recriminations, the future demanding their full attention. "California," William suggested. "Interracial marriage is legal there. Has been for years." Mercy nodded slowly. "We'd need money, supplies. I have some savings. Not much, but enough to start fresh." Their eyes met across the table, an understanding passing between them. Whatever lay between them, trust broken, feelings unspoken, must wait. Isaiah's safety came first. "We leave in 3 days," William said. "At first light." Mercy reached across the table, her hand covering his, the first voluntary touch since his betrayal. 3 days, she agreed. Dr. Porter arrived at dusk with medicine and news. Her buggy kicked up dust as she approached the ranch house. William met her at the gate, rifle resting in the crook of his arm. "They've hired Silas Reed," she said without preamble. "Bounty hunter. Used to be a Buffalo soldier before he turned mercenary." William nodded grimly. Reed's reputation preceded him. 3 men dead in El Paso, 2 in Santa Fe. Always within the letter of the law, always efficient. Inside, Mercy packed essentials for their journey: clothes, food, medicine for Isaiah, her movements precise, unhurried. The baby watched from a basket nearby, small fists waving at unseen motes in the air. Dr. Porter examined William's healing wound, her hands cool against his skin. "Another week before you'll be at full strength." "We don't have a week." She repacked her medical bag, lips pressed into a thin line. "There's a family in Tucson, former abolitionists. They help people in your situation get to California." William memorized the name and address she provided. One more debt they owed this woman. That night, an owl called from the cottonwood tree outside. William stepped onto the porch, every sense alert. A darker shadow detached itself from the side of the barn. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, a hat pulled low over his eyes. "That's far enough," William said, raising his rifle. "Mr. Blackwood." The voice was deep, cultured, unexpected. "Silas Reed. I believe you've been expecting me." William kept the rifle steady. "You're trespassing." Reed made no move toward his own weapon. "I wanted to see the man willing to risk his life for a woman like Mrs. Blackwood." "My wife." "So I've heard." Reed shifted his weight, moonlight revealing a face marked by years in the sun, deep lines around his eyes. "I fought for the Union, 10th Cavalry, fought for freedom, or what passed for it." William said nothing. The wind whispered through the grass. Inside, Isaiah began to cry, the sound carrying through the open window. "That the child?" Reed asked. William nodded once, his finger light on the trigger. "You know what he is to the Prescotts?" "Money," William replied. "Power." Reed studied him for a long moment. "Hate to see a child used that way. Worse to see him raised by folks who'd treat him like property." Then walk away. Something like respect flickered across Reed's face. "I just might do that, Mr. Blackwood. Good night to you." He melted back into the darkness, the sound of a horse's hooves fading into the night. William remained on the porch until dawn, rifle across his knees, hoping he hadn't made another mistake in trusting a stranger's word. Morning brought no sign of Reed or his men. William led the horses from the barn while Mercy secured Isaiah in a makeshift sling across her chest, their few belongings loaded into the wagon. California waiting beyond the western horizon. William lifted Mercy onto the wagon seat, his hands lingering on her waist longer than necessary. She met his eyes, something unspoken passing between them. Hope, perhaps, or forgiveness. They found Isaiah's cradle empty, the blankets still warm, a note pinned to the pillow. The child will be returned to his rightful family. No hard feelings. S.R. Reed's betrayal cut deep. William saddled his fastest horse while Mercy stood frozen by the empty cradle, the note crumpled in her fist. Prescott Mining owns the morning train, William said. They'll be taking him to Phoenix. We won't make it in time. Mercy's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. I will. She grabbed his arm as he mounted. I'm coming with you. The ride to town pushed their horses to the limit, the sun climbing high overhead, heat shimmering off the hard-packed earth. Neither spoke, the rhythm of hooves counting down the minutes they had left. They reached Redemption as the train whistle sounded. One long blast. A warning. 5 minutes until departure. William caught sight of Elijah Prescott on the platform, the older man's distinctive silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. A nursemaid beside him, a bundle in her arms. There, William pointed, by the first car. They dismounted near the church across from the station. William handed Mercy his old revolver. Stay here. I'll bring him to you. She gripped his sleeve. Be careful. William crossed the street, each step measured, his gun belt heavy against his hip. Townsfolk scattered before him, sensing violence in his posture. Prescott, he called out. The older man turned slowly, recognition giving way to contempt. Mr. Blackwood, you're too late. Give me the child. The boy is a Prescott. He belongs with his family. His family is right here. William's hand hovered near his revolver. His mother wants him back. Prescott sneered. That woman has no legal claim. The judge made that quite clear. Because you paid him to. The law is the law, Mr. Blackwood, even when it's bought and paid for. William took another step forward. The platform suddenly quiet. The train whistle sounded again. 3 minutes. I won't ask again, William said. Prescott's hand moved toward his jacket pocket. I was hoping you'd make this difficult. The first shot was fast. William's draw faster. Prescott staggered backward, clutching his chest, blood blooming across his expensive waistcoat. The world narrowed to a single point. William standing over Prescott's body, smoke curling from his revolver barrel. The crowd's shocked silence. Then shouts, movement. Prescott's associates reaching for their own weapons. Stop, a woman's voice commanded. Catherine Prescott pushed through the crowd, her face pale but composed. Enough. She knelt beside her husband's body, checked for signs of life and found none. When she looked up at William, her eyes were dry. My husband was not a good man, Mr. Blackwood, but he was my husband. William lowered his weapon as the sheriff arrived. The lawman took in the scene with a practiced eye. The dead man, the smoking gun, the crowd of witnesses. He came for my wife, William said quietly. The sheriff frowned. Your wife? Mercy stepped onto the platform, revolver still in hand. He's telling the truth. The sheriff looked between them, visibly confused. Your wife? Later, in the sheriff's office, William sat handcuffed to a chair. Mercy held Isaiah close, the baby miraculously sleeping through the chaos. The sheriff paced the floor, torn between duty and doubt. Catherine Prescott entered without knocking, a leather portfolio under her arm. Her mourning would wait. Business first. I have papers your office should see, Sheriff, she said, placing the portfolio on his desk. My son Charles's marriage certificate, his will, proof that his union with Mercy Johnson was legal and binding. The sheriff examined the documents, his face registering surprise. Why didn't you produce these before? My husband hid them from me. Catherine's voice was steady. Charles wrote to me about his marriage, about his love for Mercy, about his joy at becoming a father. She turned to Mercy. I would like to know my grandson, if you'll permit it. Isaiah is the only part of Charles I have left. Mercy studied the older woman's face, looking for deception and finding only grief. He should know his grandmother. The sheriff unlocked William's handcuffs. Self-defense. Prescott drew first. Every witness confirms it. Outside, the town had gathered, whispering, pointing, their story spreading like wildfire. William met their gaze without flinching, his hand finding Mercy's as they walked through the crowd. 1 year passed, then another. The ranch flourished under their joint care. Apple trees planted along the drive, a new barn raised with the help of neighbors who had slowly, grudgingly accepted them. Catherine Prescott kept her word. She provided funds for Isaiah's future from her personal inheritance. She visited once a month, bringing books and toys, never overstaying her welcome, always respectful of the family William and Mercy had built. The church that had rejected them now welcomed them at Isaiah's baptism. Dr. Porter stood beside them as godmother. The preacher who had reluctantly married them now praised their steadfastness in the face of adversity. 2 other mixed-race couples moved to the area. Not exactly welcomed, but tolerated. Progress measured in small steps rather than leaps. On a warm summer evening, William joined Mercy on the porch. Isaiah asleep inside after an afternoon of chasing butterflies through the garden. The land stretched before them, golden in the fading light. William handed Mercy a document, a deed to the ranch, in her name alone. I promised to protect you, not own you, he said. Mercy studied the paper, then tore it neatly in half. She took William's hand in hers, her fingers intertwining with his. What do we build next? He asked. Mercy smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. Behind them, unnoticed on the horizon, riders bearing the Prescott Mining Company insignia approached the property line.